welcome to Life, Life, Etc., a show that covers all aspects of life, relationship, and success. And I'm your host, Dr. Anna Elton. And I'm here with a special guest, Mike Ivanov. He is a former Division One athlete, hockey player, survivor of multiple traumatic brain injuries, and the founder of Mindset Mutiny. Welcome, Michael.
How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Well, good to see you as well. I guess before we start talking about you, let's talk about how we met.
I'd love that.
Okay. So we met at We Believe. It was in Saint John, Canada. It was this big event, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the event, how you met
Yes,
at Foot, how you became a part of We Believe, and
sure.
why it was important for you to be there and share your story?
Sure, absolutely. So that was a big event for me because I was very, very scared of that event. That was a big thing that I always kind of talk about is moving into our fears. And I had gotten turned on to that event through some charity work that I had done. I had built a mountain bike for charity to donate to veterans. So we donated $14,000 through this charity. I ended up meeting a guy, and this is like 4 years ago now, named Trent. And I hadn't heard from him in 3 years, and I get a text a few, maybe 6 months before the event. He's like, "Hey, I have a speaking engagement for you." And I was like, "All right, sounds great." And I've always kind of just said yes to things, even if I'm like they don't fit my schedule, or even if I'm I got other things going on, I'm a little scared, whatever. I just say yes, and then I'll figure it out
So you
later.
said yes to me and to this show, right, tonight?
That's right. We just said yes, and that's like the first step to kind of like moving through your fear, right? Because we always try to block ourselves and make up all these things. That's why we can't do things. So, I said yes, and he's like, "All right, great. I'll hook you up with the producer." And I was like, "All right, cool." I'm thinking like, yeah, a couple hundred people. I'll go, tell my story, and it'll be fun. So I get on the phone with the guy, and he's like, "Hey, Mike, you tell me a little about yourself." I kind of tell him my story, and he's like, "Great, that sounds awesome. There's going to be 6,000 people there, and I can't wait for you to come join us." And I could feel like my heart sank. I was terrified. I was like, "Man, I'm not that guy. I'm not ready for that." And that was in January, and the event was in May, right? So I'm like, I have some time to build a human being that's going to be ready to go up there and to deliver a message that mattered. Um, and it was an amazing months building up to that. I was terrified for so long. There was tons of doubt in my mind, and I just kept going to battle with it every day. I just kept doing things that just building small wins, and I knew I was going to be that guy to step on that stage and deliver a message and crush it. And that's how it worked out. And I'll tell you right now, stepping up there, uh, walking out on that stage, and it was just dead silent, and there's just this calming feeling that came over me. And I was looking out at the crowd, and I was like, "This is where I belong. This is special." And I just laid it out. It was perfect. It was exactly how I imagined it, which is important to point that out, right? Is I did envision how it was going to go, and I stepped off that stage, and I think Mrs. America was standing right there, and she said, "Hey, dude, you should do this for a living." And for me, that was a confirmation that I was in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And just so we're clear, your story, amazing. I personally loved it, the struggle and all these things that you've overcome, which not everybody knows that about you, I'm sure, but I was very impressed. And it was an amazing message delivered in an amazing way. So, I mean, it was just the environment to be around people like yourself was special. I've never experienced that before. The energy in that room, we first showed up that first day in the green room, and we were all kind of introducing ourselves. And I was looking around the room, and there were some very special people there. And I was like, "This is great." And I could just feel that energy building up to the event. And those people around you gives you the courage to get up there, and it just feels natural. Like we're all there to get better, right? To improve, to deliver a message that matters. And for me, that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And obviously we'll be back in 2 years from now. But it was lovely. And I can't even put it into words. I'm still unpacking how special it was. But that was a big challenge to myself that when I walked off that stage, I was a different person than I was when I walked up there. So very special.
So I remember the experience, right? I remember going on stage, and again, this is the biggest audience I had, and I've been speaking at events and conferences, right? But I never spoken in front of so many people. And then it was also live, right? We had how many? 1.5 million people, right? Something like that. There was a lot of people watching us live, right? Not just the audience itself. And I remember, so what I remember from that day, when I'm going on stage, right? And then briefly, just a few seconds when I'm saying something, and then when I'm going off, I feel like I was like dissociating because it was like such a cool experience, and I know like I knew my speech, right? And again, like I had no idea that we'll have help with teleprompt, right? And I was like, I need to know my speech. What if I forget my speech? And I was like, I know this is my story, but I'm here in front of so many people, and I probably will feel anxious and uncomfortable. But it was amazing. So it was definitely a really, really cool experience that we had to share, right?
Well, I love it because, a lot of people are so afraid of public speaking, right? And public speaking, has always been my greatest fear. And then in the corporate role that I have, it's always been required. So I just knew I had to get good at it. And the only way to get good at it was to ignore all those feelings that roll into you and just take on the reps. It's like every rep is like you just get in there, you keep swinging, it keeps getting easier, you keep getting better. The voice, like you start to gain that voice control because a lot of people like public speaking, their voice starts to kind of, get all kind of messed up on them. You feel that like that flushing that kind of comes over you. You can feel like you start to kind of get that blood rushing up to your head, and people psych themselves out, and I used to be that way, but I just had to keep getting up there. And this one was definitely the biggest one, just like you mentioned. But I don't know, it's something like as soon as you get up there, like everything goes quiet, and the person that you've built for all these years comes out and just gets to put on a show, and it's a peaceful thing. I felt no negative emotions up there. Like the brain just did what it needed to do, and I was almost a spectator. It's like they describe it like this: you're in this tunnel, and you can't really see anything, but you're just like performing at a level that you've never performed at before. And for me, it's like, hey, when's the next one? So we can get up there and test the machine again. It was awesome.
So actually, let's talk about how do you get to that level, right? So you're afraid of the public speaking, and then you don't know where to start. So usually, I tell my clients as a therapist, right? You need to start small. You need to aim low, right? Even if you think you can do something bigger, you still need to start with something a small step. So what was your small first step that got you to be on that stage in front of so many people?
Absolutely. That small step started many years ago. I started to tell my story to one or two people, and I'd kind of get good at talking to those people. And then I decided, hey, listen, I need to get more of an audience. There's an impact here, right? But public speaking kind of just goes with anything that you do. So I would just start testing myself. I would get into conversations with people that I normally wouldn't talk to, that I would shy away from. The stories we tell ourselves is what limits us most, right? That's one story I love to kind of say because I would always tell myself a story of being like, they don't really want to hear what I have to say, or, those people are, they're more interesting than me, or all these like very self-sabotaging things in a way. And I said, you know what? Like, I'm not that guy. I'm not going to accept these excuses for myself. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to run right at it. And I have to set an example for other people because I want to be able to help other people. So guess what? I need to get good at this if I'm going to help other people, right? So that's what I started doing. I started getting into conversations. I started really pushing myself. I started ignoring all these feelings that come naturally to all these people that are fear of public speaking, and it's completely normal. I mean, it's a terrifying experience for a lot of people. Well, you start to trust yourself. As you're talking to these other human beings and then you're engaging, you start to realize, like, okay, all right, like I know how to do this, right? I know how to interact with these human beings, and I can deliver a message that's valuable for them, and I can connect with them, right? So the more reps you put in, you begin to trust yourself. The more you trust yourself, the easier it is to do whatever you decide you want to do. So walking up on that stage, there was a lot of trust in myself that was built before that, right? And then I've always been told, so I work with a therapist myself. It's changed my life. And she always says to me, she's like, Mike, you got to trust yourself. Like even back when you were playing sports, like when the buzzer hits, right? Like you're ready to go. Like you know how to perform. You've done all the work up until this point. The game is for fun. The speech is for fun. Like you've built these, you've taken these steps beforehand. So one of the biggest things is all the work you put in before that. You can't just get a speech together and then go jump up on stage and do it. Like you have to build the person that is worthy of standing up there and doing it. And that building started, like 5 years ago, intensely building myself. Um, and it was just a beautiful thing to come together the way it did, and the people that were there. But it's about putting in the reps, and they're hard, and they hurt, and they're scary. There will be tears, but it's all worth it in the end.
Well, as I tell my clients, what is luck? It's when preparation meets opportunity, right? You were not lucky. You were preparing all this time to be able to be on that stage and deliver your speech, right? And have this impact on so many lives. So, but what I was thinking, going back to what's the first step? So, what I did for myself, I was really a shy teenager, right? And I would just blush, and then I would have a hard time, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I had like extremely hard time talking to people, but still starting the conversation, being so shy and feeling like maybe I'm not good enough or maybe I'm not saying the right thing. So what I did, the first thing I did to myself, I signed up for acting classes.
I
I
love
signed
that.
up for improv classes, and I would go there on Saturday and Sunday when everyone's sleeping, still in their warm baths. It was New England, right? It was in Boston. And I'm going there and I was like, why am I doing this? I'm like, I hate my life. I hate my life. But what am I doing here? I'm 16, 17. I'm taking the classes. I'm being uncomfortable here. But that's what helped me, to be comfortable in being uncomfortable.
That's correct.
And it was, time after time, I was like, okay, actually, it's not that bad. And that's another thing that I did to myself when I started my psychology classes. I was like, okay, I remember one of the assignments that we had in one of our first psychology classes in college. They said, well, go and try to talk to people, just random people, start a conversation, see how it feels. Or like, seriously, we just have to go to strangers? Like, yeah, you stand in line, you talk to this person at the gas station, on campus, just talk to people. And that was so helpful because I was like, now I can talk to anyone, right? I can come out to anyone, I can have a conversation. And sometimes I just come up to people, I say, hi, da da da, my name is this. And then I say, like, so what's your story? And just asking them, what's your story? They tell me their entire life story is like, wow, I'm working off clock, right?
That's
But this is
right.
what I think of, like, how do you overcome that? How do you step outside of the comfort zone? What would be that first step to be outside of your comfort zone?
I love that. So that as you're talking, I was thinking about something early on for me was I used to always sit in the back of the room. And I'm sure people listening know possibly they sit in the back of the room, right? And I used to sit back there and just maybe hide from I don't know what. But I remember reading a book, and this guy who's an ex Navy SEAL, and he was talking about all the senior guys are always in the front of the room. Like you can't get a seat in the front of the room unless you get there an hour early, right? Because these guys are in the front of the room, and that resonated with me. And I started to sit in the front of the room. Everybody, there's all those open seats, right? Like you file into a meeting, and the whole first two rows, there's nobody in the first two rows. I remember I'd always be the guy by myself in the first row, and then I started getting more things out of meetings. I started getting more engagement with the person that was speaking. And then it was just a natural progression for me to move from the front row to up in front of the room. It was natural. And I love what you say about talking to random people. And we can get to that more because I will tell you that will also help you build community around you. So I go to the same coffee shop all the time and always make sure to talk to everybody in there, customers, people working there, and I build this little community for me. So when I go in there, the energy in the room changes. All right. And I'm able to go in there and I'm able to start my day in one of the most positive ways ever because I've talked to all these different people in there. They want to come up to me and tell me what they had going on over the weekend or what book they're reading. But I've built that by engaging with people around me. I could go into that coffee shop, not talk to anybody, drink my coffee and leave. But I've chosen to engage with everybody in there. And what I always tell guys that are struggling with talking to people is I always tell them, like, listen, man, the other person on the other side is also nervous about talking to people. So be the first one to start the conversation, and they will be so happy that you did. and then you can start to talk. And I remember when we were at our speech, there was one of the speakers mentioned that people are the medicine.
Mhm.
And that really resonated with me. It stayed with me. And I've been thinking about it ever since. Because you walk into an environment like that, the other day I was a little down. I was just tired. I've been training too much. And I was kind of like, just, you get stuck in your head. And I was sitting at the coffee bar, and Shirley, one of the girls there, she says to me, "Hey Mike, like you're stuck in your head. Like snap out of it." And this is somebody that like I just literally drink my coffee with, and but she knew me to that point where she's watched my baseline. She sees Mike Ivanov and how he's usually extremely upbeat. He's like locked in. He's always sharing things. And that day I know I was a little more quiet than I usually am. So she picked up on that. And then she, boom, says something to me. And that snaps me out of it. But that would never have happened if I hadn't put in the work with these people around me. So that's all about building community. And that's also practice for when I got to get up in front of the room, right? Where it's like, hey, man, I've been talking to people all day, every day. That's what I love to do. It's just another Tuesday, right?
Mhm.
I love
Well,
that.
I know that's how we met, right? You came up to me at the elevator, right? You said like, "Hey, I'm Mike." I know we didn't get the chance to talk, right, when we had our first day in rehearsal, and it was I know like I didn't know a lot of people, right? It was really uncomfortable, but I feel like by the time that we finished our speeches, I think our last day when we were leaving, I feel like we're so close with each other. And I was actually traveling with Fred Stroke, right? He was with me, and then I had Liliana. She's coming on my next show,
Awesome.
and her friend Rachel, I believe, and
Yep.
who else was there? Roxana was there. Rachel was there, and I feel like we're just. I mean, I have some fun stories. I guess I'm not gonna spoil, like our travels and kind of what happened in the airport. It was actually pretty hilarious, like our stories from like what happened. But again, like this is what brings us together, right? That's what makes the community work, and that's how you again step outside of comfort zone and you meet people.
So I love that, and we need to get back to being uncomfortable because that's like my entire way that I run my life now. But so I guess what's important to talk about is you have to in life kind of tell your story, and you have to live it, and you have to live that lifestyle of getting uncomfortable. But when I met you, and it was very briefly, I knew there was something special about you, and this is before I heard your story. So like as you learn to talk to people and you meet so many different people, I feel like you can find out very quickly just by introducing yourself to somebody, and then just there's something that happens between two human beings where you can sense something that like our brain doesn't really register. But I knew there was something special about you. I knew there was something deep there. And then to see you get on stage and absolutely deliver, like a jaw-dropping story of struggle and triumph was just, I was like, you know what, I knew it. And it was confirming for me, and that was special. But I always tell people that I'm like, listen, you have to learn to filter, like in your life, filter these people that you need to get to know more, and you need to get good at like picking up these different parts of people. Like it's how someone introduces himself, it's how someone carries themselves. Like you can pick that up. Like I find there's a guy that I just met recently. He's a guy I do jujitsu with, and special guy. He's 22 years old, but he had a way about him, that I saw some things in him that I know that like about me. So like when you go through deep struggle, you can recognize it's somebody else. It's natural. It's very interesting. So I had kind of engaged with him, and we were fighting with each other for a while there, and day after day. And then I invited him to my office. I said, "Come to my office. I got to talk to you. If you're okay with that, I believe that you have a special story that we should talk about." And he's like, "I'd like that." So he shows up in my office. I tell him my origin story. He tells me his story, which is an amazing story of struggle and perseverance. And it's funny because I knew that there was a story behind that young man by the way that he carried himself, the maturity that he was at his age. So it's very special. And this is how I kind of move through life. And when you start to tell your story, different people come your way that normally wouldn't have come your way. And talking to people is also what brings that too. So all these people that are suffering with social anxiety, I deal with that a lot with some of the young guys I work with. I try to tell them, I said, people are the medicine, man. You get out there in those conversations, that anxiety disappears, and then it turns into other opportunities in your life. So meeting you was just like two paths crossed. Walk out of the elevator as I'm headed in, and yeah, it was just special, and I really appreciate that moment.
Awesome. I love that. So let me take you, shift gears a bit and let me take you back to how it all started, right? You played hockey, right?
Yes,
Professional.
lifetimes ago. I played junior hockey. It was a big part of my life. It was my only identity that I had from, it was you start skating around 2 years old, and then you pretty much you don't have any friends except anybody on the hockey team from that point forward in your life. It's all year round. You're a student athlete, and you're traveling on the bus, and that's your life. I didn't know any better. I was good at it, and it taught me so much about myself. I would never discount it and say I didn't, wasn't thankful for it. But you miss a lot of things along the road, and which is fine because it's kind of I'm back to like living that lifestyle now, where I'm not partying, I'm not hanging out with friends all the time. I'm sacrificing, and that's where I feel most comfortable. And it's funny that you come back to that. So as we talk, you can see there's a gap in my life where I started to do those things that I didn't ever do, and it didn't bring much happiness to me, and fell into obviously a certain place in life. But hockey taught me to fight. It taught me sacrifice. But that was lifetimes ago, And then I had a traumatic brain injury, which changed everything, and I was in denial. I never really wanted to acknowledge that it changed my personality. It was hard for me to go in the grocery store and pick between a bag of chips. It was really difficult. I had major anxiety start ramping up. I didn't talk to anybody about it. And at the time there wasn't a lot of research on it. I'm so happy to see all the research coming out nowadays to protecting people, but there just wasn't a lot there. So I was fighting this battle by myself. My identity's gone. Hockey's over. I'm sitting here with a brain injury and I've got college to contend with here. It's like I had no idea what I wanted to do. I did what people told me to do, which is fine. But went through college and did all the dumb shit. Didn't keep working on myself. Was drinking, partying, doing all that. Just getting good enough grades to get by. That's not who I am. So I lost my identity. Okay, and it was terrible. It was very difficult. On top of losing my identity, now I've got a brain injury to contend with, which I had a really hard time. It was really dark, and didn't have anybody to really help process that with. So, you go through college, you get the degree, you get out and get a regular job. And, there I am a few years into that, I get another brain injury. Um, that was the worst one. That was a crippling one. I was out of work for 3 months. I was in my parents' basement. Crazy story. I had done a lot of bad things with money, made some bad decisions, and I was living in my parents' basement with my now wife, okay, she's my girlfriend at the time, with a brain injury, and I was broke. That was a bad place to be, and but it was a place that I needed to go. So I get back on my feet. I get out of my parents' basement, and this is funny because I really don't tell people this, and I should, because people need to hear that, because you need to understand that the current circumstance isn't going to define the rest of your life. And other people are right now probably listening to this in their parents' basement, thinking that there's no way of getting out, and there is. So we move out. I get back on my feet. I'm still having problems, but I'm not talking about them. I'm not seeing a therapist. I'm not acknowledging that I'm having massive amounts of anxiety. I'm having massive amounts of depression. I'm having a lot of anger issues. This is not a proud moment, but I was punching holes in walls. I was having hissy fits, is what I like to call them. A grown man locking himself in the closet, sitting there crying. I was having major problems with regulating these emotions. And I didn't even think about possibly being related to a head injury. I didn't even think to go see somebody to talk about that. I just was like, I gotta be a man and I gotta get through this and all that crap that's not true. And that's like the real message is when you got a problem, you gotta talk about it. You gotta tell people what's going on. Crying is totally okay, but it's a signal that you need to talk about something, right? And there were many tears after this. Don't let me fool you. The waterworks didn't stop there. So I had been struggling with that. not paying attention to what it meant, and things got worse. All of the anxiety, depression all started manifesting into physical symptoms.
Hmm.
Felt like somebody had put a cell phone inside of me and just kept calling it. I was having vibrations running up and down through my body. My face was twitching. I was sweating. There was times where I wet the bed as a grown man. My nervous system was completely jacked up. And I tell that because, that's a hard thing. Nobody wants to wake their significant other up at 3 in the morning and say, "Hey, honey, I wet the bed. This is I'm sorry, but I don't know what's going on." But people need to understand the depths of how bad this can get if it's not managed, and if you don't go see a professional, right? And then you try to fight it by yourself, try to be that man and do that. That's not a valiant battle. That's not something that you want to take on by yourself. So I like to share those hard symptoms. And you Google them. I had every single one of them.
Hmm.
Okay, and I still wasn't seeing anybody, wasn't talking to anybody. My wife didn't even know the degree of what it was. One close friend maybe knew a teeny little bit about it, that I was having panic attacks. I was having panic attacks every minute on the minute. I was laying on the floor of my apartment. I can still remember the places that I thought I was going to die. I was driving myself to the hospital, fully believing that I wasn't going to make it there. It was a bad place to be. And then here I am, putting on that face at work like everything's good. Nobody I worked with had a clue, and I was at the darkest places of my life. Um, and again, ashamed of it for some reason. Okay. Nowadays, I tell anybody dealing with that, listen, we're going to get through it. I know exactly how to help you get through it. These are the people you call. This is how we handle it. Boom, 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 boom. Love you, proud of you for sharing it. That's what's important. So these things continue to go on. I'm having a bad time. My wife and I's anniversary is coming up. We're going on a beautiful trip to the Hamptons. And here I am, like absolutely falling apart, like the worst place of my life. And I remember I just didn't want to be anywhere down there. We go to a restaurant. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait for her to hurry up and eat her food. So I get the bill. I get the hell out of there. But then when I get to the next place, I don't want to be there either. Hurry up and get the hell out of there. And nothing changes. So I'm like on this high alert all the time. And I can remember we went back to the Airbnb, take a nap, and I was jacked up like every single day leading up to this 6 months, like really bad. And I just wake up crying. And my wife looks at me. She jumps off. She's like, "Mike, like, what's wrong? What's going on?" And I was like, that crying where you can't even talk.
Hmm.
It's like it's just you can't even like. It's like when I see like a really young kid who's like having a hard time communicating, just crying and can't get it out. That's how I was, and I couldn't calm down from it. And my wife just sitting there looking at me like just like, "Hey, what can I do to help you?" I was able to get the words out, and I told her, I said, "Hey, listen, Devin, I love you. Um, but I'm planning on taking my own life, and at the time, like I felt nothing saying it. I wasn't like, "Oh, that's terrible," or I didn't get any goosebumps. Like I just was like, this is the right thing to do. My brain had lost control. I had lost control of my brain. It had decided this is what we're going to do, and you're going to be okay with it. And I, looking back on that, I can see how that happened. But she sat there. She looked at me, of course, very alarmed. And the first thing she said was, "I love you." She took my hand and she's like, "Hey, like we're gonna get through this together." And that was special. If I didn't have somebody like that in my corner, I probably wouldn't be here today. Um, and I tell you, she's never, ever, ever like brought it up. We don't sit there and harp on it. But she's like, like the other day, she's like, "I'm proud of you, man. Like it's been a journey. It's been a journey." And she's never like ever brought. I guess is what I was trying to say. She's never made it about her.
Hmm.
She's never been like, "That was so hard for me and I had to watch you do these things." I was a bad person. I wasn't showing up as a good partner. I was locked in my own head. And here's this person who still loves me unconditionally, who's here to help me and is going to do whatever they can to make sure that I get better. That's special. She's still in my corner. She's my best friend. Um,
That's amazing.
yeah, I mean, and looking back on it now here today with you after everything that's all the accomplishments and all the building of myself, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Truly the best thing that ever happened to me.
So let me ask you, and I mean, I guess it's important to have your circle, right? People you can trust and people who can watch out for you and be there for you, right? But for you personally, what helped you to snap out of that place? What helped you to, once you hit the rock bottom, to start climbing back up?
It's a great question. Um, I realized that what put me there was the sum of my decisions. Okay. Um, it was a failure to get help first. Okay. First problem. So I got the help, right? So I was able to quiet the mind down. When I started to be able to quiet the mind down and started to feel normal, and of course, like when I say normal, like still experiencing massive levels of anxiety, but I wasn't having the thoughts of like wanting to take my life. That was gone. Like I knew that that wasn't the right thing. That my mind was off. So then I started working with a therapist. Her name's Kim, amazing person. She's been able to watch this entire, trend back, and it's been an amazing story. But she made me realize, like, what if? That was a question I always asked myself. Like, what if I could, like, do all these things I always wanted to do that I never did? What if I could get in shape? I was really fat, and I was not proud of how I looked. So there's a lot of doubt, fear, and insecurity that came with that, right? So I was eaten alive by doubt, fear, and insecurity. And I just would keep asking myself, like, what if I could do this? And then I did something small. First thing I did was like, you know what? I'm gonna drink a gallon of water every single day, and I'm never gonna miss a day. It has been over 5 years, and I'm sitting here today with you, and I haven't missed a gallon of water since that day. Right? So that's one small thing that then I stacked another thing, and then another thing, and another thing. I just keep stacking all of these little micro, routines that make up big silos, right? So then you have your physical, you have your mental, and you have your emotional silos. I have all these mini routines like built within each one, and I just start nailing them, and it starts to become non-negotiables. And the way to make it a non-negotiable is you just tell yourself, like, this is who we are now, and that was a big thing for me. It was the considering, like, the what if I could, and then when I go to lock it in, this is who we are now. So I was writing a new identity. I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time. I can look back and say, like, wow, that was pretty wild that you're able to do that. But that's how I did it. I took one small thing and I just locked it in. And I got good at doing it. I got really good at drinking a gallon of water every day. And I know some people would be like, yeah, dude, great. That's awesome. But for me, when I couldn't do anything, that was huge. And then it just started to go from there. And then I started like studying this stuff, started to become a student of the game. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get to know every single thing about physical fitness because I believe that that's going to be a key. The movement is a key for me. I'm going to really learn a lot about it. And then I just took that model and I applied it to like studying my brain, learning about how the brain works, learning about how the thought patterns work, learning about how to rewrite, that script, rewrite that identity. So I just became a student in my own success, in my own growth. It was a wild thing. And I look back now, like if I read, so I have journals from like these 5 years. I have everything written down, the entire journey. But when you look back at those journals where I was like literally writing about every physical symptom I was having, to looking at my journals now where it's like, oh, hey, we just got off stage at 6,000 people, like crushed it. Like there's like 17 different evolutions in there of a different Mike Ivanov. And that's kind of the point, right? Is you have to, this is tough for some people to hear, but you have to kill that old you to move on to the new one. That old you is going to keep pulling you back into that old life. And you have to say, like, we're burying that guy. That's not who we are anymore, because that guy loves to like pull you back into that life, like of that comfortability, right? Into that comfort. I want to move to the discomfort because I know that's where all the growth is. And I know that's where my happiness lies. But that old me, he wants you to come back. So I buried that guy. I've buried that guy probably 15, 20 times now. And it just keep getting better.
So interesting. So I really like about that gallon of water. So a few shows ago, a few episodes ago, I interviewed the bodybuilder, and his advice was not to remove something from your diet, but to actually add something. So in your case, you added the water, right? He talked about water. He talked about like maybe like if you're into sugar, right? Instead of removing ice cream, add an apple. And then after a certain time, you're not going to be craving ice cream anymore, right? You will get satisfied with sugar from the apple. So this is where like, instead of just removing and restricting, you're actually adding something, right, to change the whole dynamic.
That's amazing way to look at it because as you're saying it, I'm just thinking about 19 other things exactly like that in parts of my life, but also just even related to diet, right? So if I don't even know what some of those foods taste like anymore because I've replaced them, right? So you replace an unhealthy food with something that's healthy, and then like I'm driving home from work, like I can't wait to have some eggs and ground beef. Like I mean that I know that sounds silly, but like that's what I crave now. Like
Mhm.
healthy food because I've removed the unhealthy food, replaced it with something else, right? And it's the same thing with life, right? You take an unhealthy habit, you replace it with a healthy habit, you lock it in, and you never go back to that old one and you make sure you remember how you feel when like so it's the same as alcohol, right? Like I can't really drink alcohol anymore. I go like I'll go 3 weeks, have like a we had like a cocktail for 4th of July. I felt like crap the next 3 days. And it's just like that's like we're not going to do that anymore because it's sacrificing the performance, right? It's if it doesn't add to the mission and add to the goals, we cut it out. That's kind of how I've been living. So if it's not going to give me, an edge to perform, it's not going to be part of my life. It's that simple. And it has to be kind of that definitive, or else you get pulled back into those old habits.
Yeah, I love that. So as we're building on this conversation, so gratitude, right? So what we usually do, we tend to set the goals, we reach the goal, and then we set the next one, and we keep moving and moving and moving without pausing. So what I always tell my clients, you need to pause and celebrate the small success or big success. But it's extremely important to actually give yourself gratitude. Just remind yourself, you're doing great, right? You overcame so much, and this is awesome. Start with water, start with something else, but this is amazing, right? Just keep swimming.
I like that. There's a kid I know that says keep swimming. I need to do better with, taking some time for gratitude. That is a place that I could probably do better. I do find that it is from one mountain peak to the next with very little celebration. I do give that advice that you need to celebrate your wins. I don't take my own advice. And as human beings, we're really good at giving advice, not taking our own. So that is something that I can work on. But yeah, that's huge. Definitely have to celebrate the wins. You got to tell the mind, like, hey, the work paid off. Great job, let's go do it again. Positive reinforcement is key. I do talk about a lot of self-talk has been a huge way to conversations in the mirror has been a big part of my development and my accountability. Um, and when I say conversations in front of the mirror, yes, I am looking at the mirror, and yes, I am speaking out loud. And I do that with some of my clients. I say, go in the mirror, and I want you to talk out loud in the mirror. And like, I can't say it out loud. Like that's kind of weird. And I'm like, dude, that's the very problem. If you're not comfortable enough to talk to yourself out loud in the mirror, then there's going to be some real development issues that we're going to run into because this is what accountability is about. It's about holding that guy in the mirror responsible for what the result's going to be. So yeah, those are some things that really resonate with me. What you're saying, I love that. Celebrate that gratitude. I'm going to celebrate a couple of my wins later when I get home.
Awesome. So I'll add another complexity to this. So I say grace and gratitude. So you need to give yourself grace. You will not be perfect, like everything will not gonna go as you envisioned, right? If it does, that's amazing, but it's not gonna happen as you hope. And it's okay, right? You're not gonna be perfect and that's fine. You don't need to be perfect. And then you need to be grateful for what you have, right? What you accomplished so far and what you have. And same thing for your partner. This is, I guess, the secret to success in marriage, right? You need to make sure that you give gratitude to your partner and you give grace to your partner. So that
I
will be
love
your
that.
homework: grace and gratitude to
I,
yourself
I
and to your
appreciate the
love.
homework. I appreciate it. I need it. Trust me, I need it. Those are two things that are very, very key to a lot of parts of life, and those are two things that I do not give enough attention to is grace and gratitude. So I do appreciate you digging that up out of me. I know that you probably saw that somewhere in something that I said and you picked up on it. So thank you. I will work on that 100%.
I'll check about grace
I
and
know you
gratitude.
will. I know you will. I know you will. I will. I will. I will take care of business on that front for sure.
So, and another thing I was thinking as you were speaking, so you say that, like, you bury the old version of yourself, right? But what I've been seeing in my practice, unfortunately, we get triggered, right? And then we regress. That old version sometimes comes up again, right? Inside some shape or form, right? And what I was usually doing for myself and for my clients, I tell cope ahead of time. So think of the place, people, situation that triggers you. And instead of being hard on yourself and say like, well, I should have said that or done that, you say like, what can I learn from this? I can't change past. What can I take away from this? And how can I be better in the future? So that's how you're coping ahead of time.
I love that.
You preparing for like, okay, next time when I see this person, this is what I can do, or when I'm in this situation, this is what I can do. And then when you actually get in that situation, you're already prepared, you know what to do, and hopefully you're not going to get triggered, and you're not going to go in the same place as you did before.
That's great. For me, I always talk about hard conversations. Those are some of the things that have really helped me develop. Is I'm not afraid of the hard conversation. In fact, I welcome a hard conversation. You can learn a lot, both parties, right? And hard conversations have made me have to confront my ego. And an ego is what can cause you to be triggered. Most of the time, always, it can be related back to ego. Um, so for me, I've been working on ego a lot. And that's something that's very important. To become good at a hard conversation, you cannot be triggered in any way, shape, or form by anything anybody says. They have to be able to say whatever they want to say, and you have to say, yeah, I understand and I hear you. I see you. Appreciate that. You cannot start to have your own personal opinions on things. You have to just sit as another person, taking some feedback. And the more I can kill that ego, the more that I can learn about it. And trust me, I've done hours and hours and hours of studying it. I had a big ego for a long time in my life, and it did nothing but take opportunity away from me. So very important. And then, obviously doing jujitsu has really been a humbling experience. That helps with the ego as well. For anybody that hasn't done it and has an ego, they should try it. You will be fixed in a few weeks. But it's a special thing. But you're so right. Preparing, visualizing it, knowing what you're going to say, preparing the mind and the body to receive it in nothing but a positive manner. Just knowing like, hey man, I am responsible for my own actions. How I receive this is up to me. If I get triggered, that's my problem. Like I need to go work that out, whatever that is. There's a doubt, a fear, an insecurity somewhere in me that is triggering me. It's not the person on the other side of the table, it's me. And that's kind of what I've done. That's my claim to fame is doubt, fear, insecurity. Identify them all, burn them all out, work on them, talk about them, share them with others, figure out ways to fix it. I call it the war map. That's kind of what I did to fix myself was I wrote down every single doubt, fear, and insecurity that I had, the deepest, darkest ones, not the surface level crap that most people will share around, the dark stuff, the stuff you don't want to tell anybody. Okay, I wrote them down. And I said, you know what? If they're written down, that means I can fix them. And I just started fixing them. I said, okay, this is a fear. Okay, this is how I'm going to fix it. This is a doubt. Okay, well, what information do I need to know that's going to prove to me that shouldn't be a doubt anymore? So I started looking for the proof. I started building the proof, showing myself like, hey, this is the proof. And then the insecurity stuff, like, it holds you back in every part of your life, in every conversation. So for me, those insecurities, I start just sharing. I just start sharing things with people, stuff that puts me out of my comfort zone. And you know what? Not one conversation have I ever had sharing something and people are like, whoa, dude, that's too much, man. Like, whoa, I don't want to talk to you. It's never happened in my life. And I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So I just know for anybody out there that's a little worried about how they're going to be received when they start sharing a conversation, that is a thought that you put in your own head. That is a story you tell yourself
So
that
you
is
limit
limiting
yourself.
you. Yeah, exactly. I lived the life of limiting myself, and now I have figured out how not to do it, and I cannot wait to see what the future looks like because it's been nothing but amazing. Once you stop putting those limitations on yourself, like the person you can become, there is no ceiling. There's no limit. Whoever you want to be, you can be. But stop the story. Tell yourself a different story about one of being the person that you want to be. And it will come true. Because when you put it in your mind and you say it that way, all of your actions will deliver it. It's so I just keep doing it and it keeps working. So I'm just like, guys, like everybody's missing out. Like just do these things and in your life, you won't even recognize it in 2 to 3 years. I mean, it's so special, but it does start with like the inward look, like being in charge of what's in here and being okay with it, and again, eliminating doubt, fear, and insecurity. That's been like the unlock for me.
Love that. And again, if something doesn't go as planned, give yourself grace and
Yes.
gratitude, right? Be grateful where you are, and tomorrow will be a new day, and you can try again.
Gonna work on that for sure. I'm not good at that at all.
So, as we are wrapping up, please share with our viewers where they can find you, if they want to reach out, talk to you.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me mindsetmutiny.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It's mivanov, Mivanov 1224. It's Mike at mindsetmutiny.com. But more importantly, I need you to know that nobody's coming to save you. It's up to you to make those changes. You can live whatever life you've dreamed of, but you need to understand that you're blocking yourself from that. And I'm only saying that because that's exactly how I lived. And I finally figured out how not to live that way. And it's been an amazing thing. It's the reason why I launched Mindset Mutiny, because I need to share the message with other people. You can listen to the podcast. I have some amazing students that I coach. Do you need some one-on-one coaching? You can hit me up and we can talk about all of the doubt, fear, and insecurity that's holding you back in your life. I've had to confront it, and it has been the best thing for me. 99.9% of people in your life will not tell you the truth. And the only reason I say that is because when I was fat and I didn't like how I looked, my mom told me I still looked good. Okay. But that's a fact. People don't want to hurt you. But to go on this mission and to unlock the person that you are meant to be, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna cry. You're gonna want to quit. It's gonna be the most difficult thing you've ever done in your entire life. But if you can remove that ego, you can open up your ears, you can tell yourself the truth, right? That's what I do for my clients. I tell them the truth. You can change everything in your life and you can live a life that you honestly never dreamed of, because the life that I'm living today, I never dreamed of it. And that's why it's so special. And it's a special message. And I need you to trust me on that. You're in control. You can do it. And everybody here is here to support you. You need to build a circle of people around you. And I need you to understand that you will lose friends along the way. It just happens. But find the high performers, get a mentor, talk about your feelings, okay? But more importantly, execute relentlessly. That's it. And give yourself some grace and some gratitude,
Grace
right?
and gratitude. Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for being here with us, sharing your story. So powerful. And thank you for watching us. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. And I hope you guys have all amazing rest of this week.